Hi, welcome to the Tabs and Icon Consulting video series. My name is Dan Karo Ezuzu. In today's video, we're going to look at two functions, the text before and text after. These two functions were introduced by Microsoft into the test group of the function library. They are currently only available to subscribers to the Office 365. So if you are not subscribed to Office 365, you won't have these two functions. Now, what does these two functions do? The text before extract a text after identifying a delimiter. We already know what delimiter is from our previous video. A delimiter is simply an identified separator between words in a cell. Now the text after will extract a portion of that text after identifying the delimiter. Now let's look at the logic syntax of these functions. The logic syntax of these functions has 6 arguments. 2 are mandatory arguments while 4 are optional arguments. The first argument, which is a mandatory argument, is text. Now this refers to the text from where you are extracting a portion. In actual work, it's going to be the cell address because you're not going to be typing the text. Of course, if you do, you're going to put that in quotes. The delimiter simply means the identified separator that you're going to use to extract the portion of that text. That is also an compulsory argument. The next one, which is an optional argument, is the instance number. The instance number refers to the number of times that the delimiter should appear before extraction is done. By default, it should be 1, or it is 1 by default, but you can actually extend it to 2 if you want it to appear twice before you extract the portion of that particular text. And if you want it to loop until the final delimiter is seen, you can use -1. So by default it's 1. Now the next argument, which is also an optional argument, is the match mode. The match mode simply means that are you extracting it as a case sensitive text or as a non-case sensitive text. By default it will be 0, which is case sensitive, where you can actually change that to a non-case sensitive text. The fifth argument is the match end, meaning you're matching till the end of the text. If you don't match the end of the text, simply means you are matching to a particular period, particular instance of that text, which means if you don't find the delimiter up to that level, you are going to return an error message if NA. Otherwise, it can extract up to the end of the value, which case you'll be selecting 1. By default is 0. The last argument is if not found. If not found is similar to if error in our usual if statement, or if NA. That means in the event that that value is not found, what should I return? So you actually return whatever value you need as a quote. Now let's go to our data to illustrate this. In our first illustration, we're going to use the mandatory arguments only. So I have this data. Now I have full names and I'm splitting that between surname and other names. Our understanding is that the first names are the surname, while the other ones, 1 or 2, are the other names of the individual. So I'm going to identify a delimiter. The first delimiter I can see here is a space. So a space is my delimiter. So I'm going to return the name Choosecols, which is appearing before the delimiter. So I'm going to say equal to text before. I open up the bracket. It's asking for the text. Now I move straight to the text. This is where the text is. I take my comma and it's asking for the delimiter. I've identified my delimiter as a space. So I take my space, this how to inside space. Since I'm not bothered about the optional argument, I end my logic syntax and I hit my enter key. So it gives me this. Now I can actually copy this down to the end. So I've extracted all the surnames. Now the other names, I'm going to use text after. Yeah. Now where is the text? Still text here, and I take my comma. I'm extracting text after the space. So I take this and I hit my enter key. So I can just drag this down and I get my surnames. So I've used the text after, so I get the other names for that. I've used the text before to extract the surname, and I've used the text after to extract the other names. Now I've used only the mandatory arguments because the optional arguments were not necessary for this particular exercise. So let's go to the second illustration and see how we can use the optional arguments. Or I need to take out this first. Okay, let me take out this. So now I have names with qualification or titles, as the case might be. So I'm going to extract the names separate on a different column and extract the qualifications on a different column. Now, I'll first of all identify my delimiter. In this case, I can say after the name there is a full stop, a dot, and then the qualifications. So I'm going to extract the text that are appearing before the full stop. So I say equal to text before. I take my text before the full stop, so I take the full stop there. Now if I end here like we did in the earlier one, I will get this, but let's just extract this down and see what happened. You notice that in this particular name that doesn't have a full stop or a dot is returning an error message, but I would naturally want to have this name because I want the names here. So I'm going to extend this. I take my command, it's asking me instance number. Well, do you know that by default the instance number is 1, so if you leave it that way, no problem. I'm going to take 1 and I take a comma here, case sensitive or not. Let me just take case sensitive and I take this. I'm going to match till the end. I match to the end and I hit my enter key. Now if I take this down, it's extracting everything. So I already have this. Now I have used the arguments up to the 5th optional argument. So I move straight to extract the qualification or title, as the case might be. Now for this, I have BSc, ACA, and the PhD. So what do? I say test after. Test after. That's test after. If I take this and I take my comma, the delimiter is a dot, so I take a dot. Now it extracts this. But if I copy this down, let's copy it down, you will notice that when it got to this name that have no title, is returning an error message. But I want to be either a blank space, but since a title, if you don't have any qualification, I think we can actually put a Mr. or a Mrs. as the case might be. So I'm going to alter this a little bit. I'll take my comma. Of course 1 is the default here, so I take 1. If I don't take 1, is the same thing because by default it's going to return 1. Case sensitive, yes. Now I get, do I want to match to the end? I can match to the end. I take this and I hit my enter key first. So let's take it down and see what happened. Fine, it's extracted, but it left this place blank. Now I would rather wish, if you don't have any qualification, let's put Mr/Mrs. so that you, whatever class you belong, that will be there. So I'm not going to end it there. I'm going to the last one. Let me use the 0. That's don't match to end. So that in that event, I'm saying if not found, what should I do? I'm going to say if not found, put in a title of Mr. or Mrs. Yeah, I think this goes. I hit my enter key and I copied this down. Now you notice that for those names that doesn't have any title, it's putting a title Mr/Mrs. So this is how to use these new functions of test before and test after. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you very much for listening. Bye bye.